Please.
Okay, so I heard Claudia Bianchini's presentation, and I think it was the first or second day, I can't remember, and she mentioned Elena Pizzuto, who was a linguist, who's an Italian linguist, who claimed that you cannot fully understand sign languages until you fully represent them. And this was what my thesis was really about, how to represent Maltese Sign Language using SignWriting. And I actually analyzed written texts in the Literature Puddle, and to investigate whether the written text could reveal anything about the linguistics of Maltese Sign Language. We have very little research carried out in Maltese Sign Language because it's such a small language, because it's such a small country, and the resources, human resources, are limited. So using the written text, I was able to come to some conclusions and to come to some descriptions about Maltese Sign Language. So SignWriting can contribute to the field of sign linguistics, and that's my main point that I'd like to kind of claim here. I mean, there's proof from the work that I've carried out, and there are other researchers also who have mentioned this. That the lack of a written system for sign language, in a way, it puts sign language at a disadvantage. Whereas spoken languages, they do have written forms, so they can. There are different levels, completely different levels. Anyway, okay. So there are many gaps in sign linguistic research. And due to the lack of a writing system. And today, in 2014, it's the 40 years since the birth of SignWriting, it can no longer be claimed that there's not enough data to analyze, because some researchers were kind of claiming that it's still in its and it is in the beginning stages. But still, I have analyzed the Sign Puddle in quite considerable depth, and I've come to realize that there are some languages, sign languages, that are using SignWriting actively, and they do have a significant amount of data and written texts that are available there, and that are ready there and available in the public for researchers, sign linguists, to analyze whenever they like. So if you could show, Steve, if you could show page 1, please, for my presentation notes.
Yeah, I'm sure he heard you.
Okay.
Page 1. So I'm going to click on this, and we'll see what we get. There we go. Wow, I can see it. I don't know whether we're going to see the interpreter. That's another story.
I'm not sure. Okay, well, maybe you can just show it and then take it off. And
let's do that. Let's just be quiet for 1 minute and look.
Okay.
Okay, back to you.
I think that's fine. Yeah, and so the 10 active sign puddles that I found were the ASL Bible, the Brazil, the Czech Republic, Germany, Malta, Nicaragua, Norway, Spain, Tunisia, and United States. These are literature puddles, okay, not dictionary puddles. They're the literature puddles. And they were active in 2012 and 2014, and they were the ones that I analyzed. I couldn't analyze these puddles in too much depth because of the different sign languages involved, naturally. And another shortcoming with this, with the sign puddle, as I've already mentioned to Stephen in some conversations we had about this, is that the lack of variables, that we can't identify the exact amount of writers and ages, the age of writers, and other variables that might be interesting to conduct further research. But I think that the literature sign puddles are a wonderful resource that can be used to, to make cross comparisons and comparative studies between other sign languages in the future. So that's an area for future research. I'd just like to show page 2. Well, not just.
So I'll click on it now.
Okay. Okay, if you could put it down, because I still have to sort of talk about what it is, because otherwise it's just nonsense. Well, I also investigated the whole 81 puddles to see which ones were truly active and which were less active. And the ones that are highlighted in yellow are the ones which weren't active over the 1.5 year, and the ones in blue were active. So that's a whole list of this. So if everybody needs these stuff, I'll put them up on the website.
Yeah, we'll look again. How about that?
And they can get information to this, so we can hurry on. Okay, and so from the research, this is just a very small part of the study that I carried out, but I wanted to kind of place Maltese Sign Language in its wider context of Sign Puddle. And from the analysis of the puddles, I came to 2 conclusions mainly, which the first conclusion is that every glyph set used, I mean, there's a general assumption, and it's been stated that no sign language requires the whole glyph set of ISWA 2010. But that's kind of an assumption, and this the work I carried out for this section confirms that very strongly, that none of these 10 literature puddles have ever used the full glyph set of base symbols of the ISWA 2010. So this validates that assumption. That's one conclusion I could get to. And the other conclusion was that from these 10 literature puddles, there is evidence, clear evidence, that different choices are being made when using sign writing. And I think that's a very important thing to note, okay? Because different choices result in the evolution of a writing system into an orthography. So with time and use, different orthographies are evolving from one system, which is sign writing. So I think sign writing is kind of evolving now to the stage where, rather than talking of sign writing as a general system, it's like talking of the Latin script. It's no longer talking of it. We no longer talk of the Latin script, but rather we talk of the English alphabet, or whatever Maltese alphabet uses the Latin script. It's the same thing that's happening here. I think it's evolving now. Sign writing is evolving into different orthographies for different sign languages. The way I use the term orthography, by the way, is that when a sign language put sign writing to use, then we immediately talk of an orthography, because once a writing system is being put to use, different choices and decisions are being made about how to apply that writing system, and they will deviate from the original rules of sign writing, because then each sign language will make up their own kind of rules of how to write their own sign languages, and this is a very fascinating area which would be other researchers can investigate at this point in time, I think. Okay, so mainly that's what I really wanted to say. I must have gone really fast. Go through.
Well, that's actually fine. I have lots of questions.
Any other questions? Sure. I mean, if you'd like to see, I mean, just to show you the different glyph choices being made by different puddles, you can go to page 6 and, well, just to see a few of the symbols. There are other symbols, but just page 6 just shows some, like the ASL. If you can see on the first column, there are the different puddles and the different number of glyphs being used by different puddles. And to make a general conclusion to that, let me just see where it is. Okay, if you go to page 5, am I going too fast?
No, it's okay. I'm just trying to fathom it. Where are we? We're on page 6 right now, so go back to page 5.
Okay, sorry. You go back to page 5, you can see how many space symbol glyphs have been used by the different puddles.
Okay, wait.
They're all much smaller. So ISWA 2010 has, there's 639. I know there's 652. It's just that I excluded the detailed location punctuation because I couldn't calculate those.
Maria, I need you to stop because I'm lost. I'm so sorry.
I'm sorry.
Of course, it's been a really long day for me, so that's maybe partly. But it's also that the first thing I want everyone to understand is that Maria has done incredible work. I never had a chance to really introduce you. It has been, what, at least a decade, isn't that right, that you've been working on your dissertation? Isn't that true?
I've been working on my dissertation for about 5 years, but before I was working on sign writing for my master's and my undergraduate thesis.
Yes.
Back in
So it's
2000.
been many years, and you know
Yeah.
sign writing so well, and you've been working with it for so long that it's almost like natural for you to be calling a file a puddle. But not everybody even knows that. Since we are presenting to a very big world, we really don't know who is watching. And at this moment in time, I can't tell, but you know, I found out that we had around 300 people at a time at one point, you know, that kind of thing. So I hope that all the 300 people who are watching know what a puddle is, but just in case you don't, it is the name of a file when you're using Sign Puddle Online, which is the software that Steve Slavinsky developed, and which we have been using for a long time. Isn't that right? Yeah, so when you say that a certain puddle from a certain country, we're talking about a country that has been going up on the software Sign Puddle Online and writing free, and just when they want to write something, they can just write it right there in their language. And you've been studying that process, haven't you?
Yes, yes. Well, yes. Only as I didn't go into too much depth. I mean, I did study this aspect mainly to place Maltese Sign Language into, and the writing system, and the orthography of Maltese, into a wider context. But yes, I did investigate this.
And so with Malta, I'm looking at this PDF, and I'm going to come back to you because we were losing our interpreter maybe if I don't see you face to face. But in Malta, you have written Maltese Sign Language, haven't you?
Yes, yes.
And although I know we're diverting for a minute, could you tell us what some of the documents are that you've written?
Okay, we've written children's stories, so translations from storybooks, children's storybooks, and we've written some excerpts and verses from the New Testament, which we then gathered together, and we kind of produced the Christmas story, selected verses of the Christmas story. So translations from the Gospel of Luke and Matthew, just a few verses though. And there are also some prayers, traditional prayers, which we have placed there. That's it mainly. So.
Well, you've also done dictionaries, haven't you? Of course, that may not be your
This is the Literature Puddle. Yes, there's Professor Maria Alexander, who has published the Maltese Sign Language Dictionary, and it's still in process, so we hope to have more volumes coming out. Yes, that was back in 2003 when the first dictionary came out, and we had used SignWriting back then as part of the dictionary. Yeah.
I think it's about the late 1990s that Dr. Alexander, I think, started using SignWriting in some way. And then I guess was she your mentor for your?
I was an undergraduate student in 1998 when Professor Maria Alexander was teaching me at the time, and she had introduced SignWriting, and I was just fascinated by the system. And back then it was the old videos, and I transcribed handwritten in the earlier days.
Is that right?
Yeah.
And that's wonderful. So you have a long history. The country of Malta has been using SignWriting for a long time. I mean, that alone is amazing. That story. Yeah.
I'd like to add that the deaf people in Malta, they have taken to SignWriting very warmly. They feel very proud of the writing system. In my thesis, I worked with 10 deaf participants who contributed and I'm very grateful to them for their help. And they are readers of SignWriting. So we have, although 10 sounds like a small number, it is a very large number when you consider that the deaf community is so small here in Malta. And then they kind of show SignWriting to their friends and their peers. So we're not quite sure if it has spread even a little bit more than that.
Oh, I have a feeling it has. And your work, I think, is going to start to sink in. You know, it's a really thick dissertation. My memory is you have, what, about 600 pages? Or how many pages do you have?
Yeah, there's about 630, 650. But it's full of diagrams, so don't be disheartened if you want to read it.
And I was blessed to supposedly be an advisor, but I felt so badly because I really never read all 600 pages. I apologize, Maria.
No, but you were a supervisor because you've been very active and active helper since the beginning. We've been in contact with you since then, so
You did a beautiful job, and I actually, when I started reading your work, I started to realize that you're a linguist. And I know that sounds funny, but I started to grasp that you were seeing sign writing from that perspective, which is exactly what you should do, and I'm glad you did, and yet I'm not. And it was wonderful to hear about the system from your perspective, and I loved it. In fact, I don't know, later on we just have to talk about what's going to happen, because there are certain excerpts from it I would love to get written. There's really some beautiful writing in there.
Yes, I hope to make the thesis available.
Sure, in time whenever I know it just happened. You see, it was on July 9th, I think. Isn't that right, that you defended your dissertation?
Yes.
That's just a couple weeks ago. In fact, Dr. Erica Hoffman-Dillaway was one of the people who reviewed your defense. Isn't that true?
Yes. Yes.
I even saw you and Erica in photos in Malta on Facebook. So you must have had some relaxed time after the defense, didn't you?
Yes, I did.
That's good. I'm so glad. Well, anyway, I was really excited to hear from Dr. Alexander that all went well and that you are now Dr. Maria Galea, and no surprise. And the reason I'm bringing this up for everybody is I'd like them to understand that there's a long history in Malta with using sign writing, and that Maria is carrying it forward now to the next generation in a new way, because Maria has analyzed, for example, how many symbols are used from each country to write a certain language. I guess what you're trying to point out, Maria, is that like you just said, you said the Latin alphabet. Here in the United States, at least I tend to say the Roman alphabet. I think that's just a slight difference in our cultures or language or something. But nonetheless, it's the same thing, isn't it? We're talking about A, B, C. It all looks very similar under that Roman or Latin umbrella. And how in Denmark, for example, they have different symbols that we don't have in the English alphabet. They add an A with a little circle over it, and they add an O and E that blends together and becomes an O with a slash. Those little extra symbols are how each country has their own unique symbols from the Roman alphabet. Isn't that what you're saying?
Yes, that's what I'm saying.
Yeah, and so therefore yes, go ahead.
And the thing is that sign writing, as it is being used very phonetically, which means that people try to make a recipe of how they sound, kind of. But in actual fact, what is needed is a representation, just enough information to read the sign, which is different. It's a written representation. And just to give you an example of, if you could, I'm not sure. Is it working when I show the slides or not? Because I can't see.
Valerie has to show the slide.
Sorry?
Valerie has to show the slides. Just
okay. So if you could show slide.
I did show it, so let's try. Slide 9.
Page 9.
Page 9.
Because my point. Not to open the slide is absolutely. Okay. My point is, is the interpreter on right now? Yeah? Okay. So my point is that
wait, I'm sorry, I don't think it is. I don't really know. But unless we could see the
just in case, the thing is that
okay, I'm going to click on Maria now. Okay. You're back, Maria.
The analysis of the work was actually looking for what was not readable, what couldn't be read, meant that it wasn't perhaps adequately represented in sign writing. So there are a few examples, such as the sign sheesh what. And when you sign this, you just sign it, loosely. And so when we had sign writing, we signed it as we sign it, which was right under the head. But in actual fact, it could be read much more clearer when it was placed right at the top of the head on the right side, which indicates that the position of the head to the the position of the head glyph with the handshake is the salient feature of the sign. And another example is last Sunday, where we say last Sunday, and we used to sign it with just the shoulder glyph, the handshake glyph, and the arrow. But then there was one deaf sign writer who added an arrow to the shoulder, so it was with the shoulder glyph, the arrow, and then the handshake and the movement, and that could be read much more clearer than the other spelling. And so sign writing shows the salient features of the sign, the evolution of analyzing the evolution of the writing system helps a linguist identify what the salient features of the sign are. Another example is 1, 2, and 3 in Maltese, which when I'm signing to you loosely, I could just sign 1, 2, and 3. But when they were represented in written form, just as 1, 2, and 3 in this rotation, they couldn't be read as clearly as they could be read when they were slightly rotated, which was 1, 2, and 3. So the fact that the hand can be read easier when it is slightly rotated indicates that it is a salient feature of those signs. And this can be the same thing can be applied to other areas of the language, such as the morphology and syntax. So sign writing, analyzing sign writing text will help the readability of sign writing text will help a linguist discover the salient features of the signs, and that's the whole point. So I hope that made sense. I can't hear you. I can't hear you.
I had to unmute. No, don't worry, that was me. Okay. Sometimes we have issues with sound where one person's mic will interfere with another, so I had to mute myself. Can you imagine? And so that way you could talk without any noise. So I had to unmute myself to say something. I'm sorry. Anyway, no, everything's cool. Okay, so did you know, I'm sure you know, that a while back Adam Frost tried to pin down what handshakes were used to write American Sign Language. That in our Sign Puddle, just so everybody knows, we've been using the ISWA 2010, which is really a large symbol set. And because it's such a large symbol set, there are many handshakes that aren't used in every sign language. They are used somewhere, but only probably in some cases by one country. I actually ended up adding handshakes for Ethiopia that I suspect are not used in most countries. And at the time that I did it, I felt worried about this very fact, that it was almost overloading the rest of the world with these symbols that they probably wouldn't be using every day. So it is true that we could possibly hone down and get separate puddles or separate symbol sets for every country. Have you worked on that for Maltese Sign Language?
Yes. One of the conclusions to the work. I can hear myself. Sorry. Thank you. One of the conclusions to the work is the Maltese grapheme set. So from a glyph set, moving towards a grapheme set. And I came up, I didn't reduce the handshakes that much from the analysis, but the movement glyphs were reduced drastically. So there were much fewer symbols for much fewer glyphs that are required, because at the end of the whole work, I kind of formulated a manual that could be used to teach Maltese, the writing of Maltese Sign Language. And so the glyph sets are much smaller than what is there in ISWA. And this is, I think, is the value of studying each sign language separately and coming up with different glyph sets. I imagine, I'm not a programmer, so I wouldn't know, but I would imagine that to have to adapt sign writing into a keyboard, it would be much easier if you had just the glyph set, which is a much more smaller symbol set for a given language. And perhaps this is the way. Perhaps this is the future. You know, investigating the different texts, different sign languages in their individually, come up with different. It's the same way as you have here in Malta we speak Maltese and English, and we have a Maltese alphabet and we have an English alphabet. They're different. I think it's the same thing. That will happen naturally, probably.
It will happen naturally, but from a software point of view, we do have to also move it along to help people so they can maybe create their documents with less frustration.
Yes, especially because sign languages are minority languages, so you would need to, and they're probably never going to be, the standard language of a country. So yes, you need to, I think the need to investigate these things will help the process. Yeah.
And if you have the symbol set you feel is correct for Maltese Sign Language, I think in time Steve and I and even perhaps Adam, we could focus on getting that up for you just with that symbol set. I'm not quite sure how we could do that, but we could try some kind of, I mean, Steve knows better than I.
Yeah, you could use the symbol set as a pilot to see what would happen if you had to investigate ASL in the same way, and then you could use that to then establish ASL, the sign writing of ASL, rather than having it. I think this is perhaps the it makes sign writing so wonderful that there are so many glyphs, but at the same time, it's one of the limitations, I think. So actually studying each sign language individually will automatically reduce the glyph set much drastically, I would think.
Yes. Now, do you have it pinned down for Maltese Sign Language yet?
Yes. I haven't got it. I haven't got it in the presentation here, but yes, I do.
That's fabulous. I'm glad to hear that. Do you mind if I put Steve on for just a minute? He can share with us what would be involved to get a sign puddle to work that way. I am going to have to mute myself as my guest, and then I'm going to click on Steve here. Go ahead, Steve. Can you hear us?
Yeah, I can hear you. With the sign puddle, we can analyze any puddle and we can come up with an automatic reduction of the set, and then we can manually go over that and tweak that so we add ones that we need and take ones that we don't really need. The new sign maker that I'm designing works on various symbol sets, so you can use whatever reduced symbol set that you want, and that way when you're dealing with the sign maker, you're not overwhelmed with all those hand shapes. You're only shown the ones that you really need to use.
Okay.
So Steve, what you're saying is that you're already working towards that development. Is that right?
That is right.
Wow. Hey, Maria, we're closer than we thought.
Yeah.
That's kind of cool. I'm delighted about that. I didn't know that. So tell me about your dissertation. What is your future, Maria? What would you like to do with sign writing now in the future in Malta?
Okay. I think I like to use the manual that has been created to see and teach it to deaf people as it is, and then have them create their own writings to see what they do with it. I think that would be a good next step to see how this can be applied and how it can be used, and to check and to test whether it is truly appropriate and whether it's accepted, because the orthography has to be accepted by the deaf community. That is a must, because it's their language and we're just here supporting it. And then other areas, I mean, this could go, this could go, in many different directions. It could be, the manual could be used then in Malta for education, for deaf students to learn sign writing, and then hopefully bridge in literacy, as a bridge in literacy, to learn the written languages, because they need those ultimately in their education. And I don't know, speech therapy, many works to come out of this. So, yeah. Programming, but that wouldn't be my area, but it could be used, for others too.
Well, I want to, if you can hear me now, I hope. We're having sound issues, that's why, honey. It's just technology, I tell you. Well, I think this is, I'm thrilled, Maria. Thank you so much for choosing to present so soon after defending your dissertation, after working for so many years on a 600-page document that was so overwhelming. I'm just so impressed with your strength and courage. And you've also contributed so much to SignWriting's history already. And now, if you can help us hone down what symbols are needed for different sign languages, but especially Maltese Sign Language, I think that would be a major step forward. Would you like to say something now to say goodbye? Because I'm starting to tire, and I'm going to talk a little bit about my own talk. And if it makes you feel any better, I haven't even begun to be prepared. So I guess everybody's going to have to listen to me ramble. And then we're going to close the presentation. So tell me, what more would you like to tell everybody?
I mean, basically that's it. If anybody wants to read the work, like I said, it will be available online very soon. And then there's the paper, which is just a section of the work, which is available right now. I'll finish that. So, and if anyone wants to contact me or any further questions, just please feel free to do so. That's it. And thank you. I'd like to thank I thank you and Adam and Steve, because Steve was instrumental in establishing, the archive that I needed, and whenever I needed help, with Sign Puddle, and he was a lot of help. So I'd like to thank all of you, and well done for the symposium, because I think it's been a wonderful experience. Did you manage to get